it's wonderful to talk with you today. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Adele. I'm 25. I live in England in a little Kent village with my husband and my Dalmatian Odin. Um, he's not here at the moment, otherwise he'd be causing a lot of noise. My husband's taking him out for a walk so that it can be quiet. Um, yeah, that's probably the basics, really.
Good. Do you have a favorite hobby?
My favorite hobby. Um, so my hobby kind of became my business. So I'd say my favorite hobby is illustrating, which is what I do now. It's kind of the thing that I lean to the most, even though it is kind of work. It's still what I love to do. So that's definitely like what I gravitate towards hobby wise. But if you can count just kind of quality time with my husband, like as a hobby, I'd probably say that was because anytime he's here, I just want to be with him. So he's my hobby, I suppose. I just love spending time with him.
That's wonderful. Um, and if you have a job outside of your chronic illness, because I know chronic illness is a full-time job in itself, would you like to tell us what your job is?
Yeah, so I am a full-time illustrator. That is like the only thing I do because of chronic illness. I don't have like a normal job in sense of like going like a 9 to 5 office job or anything like that. I do everything from home in my little studio space. So essentially, I illustrate positive and cute things and I put them onto products and I sell them on my Etsy store. I'm looking into maybe having my own website and things, but that's like the basis of my business. Like the way that I make money at the moment is through selling product. And I do have a YouTube channel as well, which I recently got monetized. So I make a little bit of money there. So I suppose that's kind of a job in a sense as well. Um, but yeah, I just create things that make me happy and other people buy them, which is crazy.
Well, that's so wonderful. And I'll make sure that at the end of this interview that people can follow you and find you. So we'll talk more
Thank
about that at
you.
the end, but
Thank
that's so
you.
wonderful. So now let's talk more specifically about chronic illness, because that's what we're here to bring awareness to. So my first question is, do you have a diagnosis for your symptoms?
I do. So um, I have chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. They were diagnosed kind of quite a few years apart from each other. So I got chronic fatigue syndrome when I was 13, I believe. And then I think about six years later, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia as well.
Okay. Um, can you describe what those diagnoses mean to you?
What do they mean to me? When I was first diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, obviously I was very young. I was going through school. I think I was in year 8. I don't know what that is for you because I know everyone has different terms, don't they, in England and America. Um, yeah, I for me it kind of it helped me get through my schooling because when I was diagnosed, it was still, I mean, it still is a very unknown illness. Like a lot of people don't know about it or they don't know like what it entails and like the struggles that people have with it. So for me, the diagnosis just kind of helped me or helped my teachers understand the extra support that I needed, even though they weren't the most supportive initially. Like, unfortunately, I think with school, or at least when I was struggling, it was very much a you've missed this much, you need to keep up. There was very little support there, but so initially for 6 months I was just off school, and there was no explanation to why I was off school other than investigation with blood tests and kind of ruling everything out. But once I had that diagnosis, it just meant that I could get that extra support. So it was really helpful at that time, I suppose, to have that.
Hmm. Yeah, I can imagine that that was very hard to be diagnosed so young with that.
Yeah.
Um, and you've already kind of talked about this, um, but did having a diagnosis help you, like by actually having a name to your symptoms?
Yeah, I think it does help in quite a few ways. Like back to school, having it's not very nice when you're poorly and people are asking questions, you don't have an answer for them. You're just like, oh, I'm sick, I'm tired, and it just there was a lot of kind of um like people would call me lazy and stuff like that at school. Like children obviously can be not the nicest all the time. So there was a lot of that going on. But once I had that kind of diagnosis, I could say, oh, I've got this.
Mhm.
And people are like, oh, okay, what is that? And it kind of gives you that like more level playing ground of being able to chat without being judged as harshly because you've got like an official diagnosis. But also in the terms of um, for me personally, having the diagnosis helped because it wasn't kind of, or it became real. And I understood it wasn't just me causing those issues. Like I think before diagnosis, you sometimes beat yourself up of like, what am I doing wrong?
Mhm.
Like, you're just trying to get through it. But having that diagnosis kind of, I find it's quite heartbreaking. I remember being and my family being very upset by it when I was so young and diagnosed, because initially it was possible thyroid issues and you can take medication for that. So getting diagnosed with something that has no cure was really like a really hard adjustment, but also knowing what it is and how to kind of help yourself through that and getting the extra support through that diagnosis, like getting I had a specialist doctor for a few years. um yeah, generally I think it's quite important to have that for your own mental well-being, and also the help that will then be available to you after getting that diagnosis.
Yeah, that makes total sense because otherwise sometimes it feels like everyone else in yourself are almost gaslighting yourself, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, like why can't I do this? Maybe it's just all in my head. So that's really
Yeah,
really important to realize that sometimes having a diagnosis is so good for yourself too, just mentally.
yeah, exactly.
And you said you were off school for about 6 months. So did it take that long to find a diagnosis for your chronic fatigue, or was it longer?
So I wasn't off constantly. It
Mhm.
was more of like I'd be back for a day and then I'd be off for 4 days and then I'd be back, and it would just kind of wipe me out. But because we didn't know what it was, as soon as I kind of felt a bit better, I'd go to school straight into a full time routine, and that would just kill me off. And then
Mhm.
I'd have to recuperate for 4 days. So yeah, it was about 6 months of I don't even know how many blood tests I had, but they were testing for so many different things. But yeah, if I remember right, the time scale was around the 6 month mark when they took, like, kind of the doctors said to me, we've ruled everything out. This is
Mhm.
the only kind of thing that we can say you have. So yeah, it was about 6 months.
And then did you think that you've always had fibromyalgia as well, or did that gradually come on over the 6 years?
Um, yeah, that's a hard one to. So I do think it maybe started developing a few years after, because I have these very kind of painful pressure points on my body that like flare up, they kind of swell up, and I struggle with like touch, so like hugging people, or um yeah, I just have very sensitive parts of my body that people generally, you're having a chat with someone, they might knock you on the arm, like those kind of things are quite painful for me. But it definitely wasn't there initially, but it started to come on a few years after, but it wasn't until I can't remember the exact time I got diagnosed. It wasn't until maybe 5 years after that I went to see a rheumatologist, and he essentially diagnosed me with both, because we weren't sure whether maybe it had been fibromyalgia all along, and because the symptoms cross over quite a lot. So they just kind of did a physical examination and kind of looked at, you know, all of my thick paper of records that I'd had over the years. And he just basically explained to me that my body was going to jump between the conditions. So sometimes I might be feeling um, more pain or more sensitivity, which would be like the fibromyalgia side of things, and then um, like the tiredness and fatigue, obviously with the chronic fatigue. So yeah, that's when it explained to me that my body was going to be jumping in and out, and I just had to kind of take it day by day and see how to deal with it. So yeah.
Yeah, is that difficult to wake up and not know if you're going to be in pain or fatigued? Like how does that affect your daily life?
Um, so I've got, it sounds a bit sad really, but I've kind of got used to it a little bit, in the sense of understanding that waking up is likely to be quite difficult. And um I have just kind of meshed the two together, I suppose, in my own brain,
Mhm.
because it makes it easier. And I just kind of generalize my symptoms to be either or, without kind of saying, oh, I think the fibro is flaring up today, or I think this is flaring up today. I can tend to just keep it at general and try not to think about it too much, I suppose, because it's been like 10, 12 years now since my first diagnosis. So um, I've just learned to kind of get on as best I can and try not to worry too much about the way that I'm feeling, because it's a constant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good attitude to just, yeah, not focus too directly on it, right? To just be like,
Yeah.
this is
Otherwise,
what
it just,
it is.
I don't want it to become me. I don't want to be, I still, I'm Adele and I love doing these things and I suffer with this. I don't want it to be at the forefront, because mentally, I think it, for a long time, I was in a very, very bad mental place with it. And I don't want to fall down that hole again, like I don't want to be stuck in that. So I tend to just, well, these are the cards I've been dealt, in a sense, and I need to just kind of get on with it and do the best that I can with those cards that I've been given. And, if things are better when I wake up, like, oh my goodness, make the most of that. Like, just enjoy it, because we don't know when it's going to change. So, yeah, I try not to think about it too much, really.
That's totally fair. Yeah. Oh, I think that's great that you have such a great attitude towards that. So I guess my next question is, how has your experience of the world changed since your symptoms started?
um, for me, I'm definitely, I've become a very, um, like, enjoy the little things kind of person.
Mhm.
I don't really think about, I'm not like a 5-year plan kind of person. I'm just kind of a day by day. What can I do in my day that brings me that little bit of joy? Or it's just really changed my mindset in a positive way. Like, yes, these things have been really hard. And, the last 12 years, there have been very, very lows. Like, that doesn't make any sense, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
There's been some very low times, but I'm kind of grateful for those, because it's allowed me to kind of just see the world a little bit differently. And um, well, I wouldn't have my business without my struggles. Like, it's the reason I started my business. And um, yeah, I just think it's allowed me to look much more positively on things and not worry about huge pictures, but enjoying those little moments that can create them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, that sounds, I think everyone needs that attitude almost, right? Like, I know it's so cliche, but to say stop and smell
Yeah.
the roses, right? Like, I think that's
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I do it all the time. Of course, there's
no.
days when I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, like, why do I feel like this? Or why are things like this still? And it gets exhausting after a while, fighting your own body every day is absolutely exhausting. But generally, I, um, yeah, I just enjoy the little things. And I love that I can also, like, kind of bring that to other people as well. Like, and I do that through my business as well. Like, I have like a collection called Find the Good in Every Day. So it's all about like digging through the bad things and finding that little thing that brings you joy, whether it's like your cup of coffee in the morning or cuddles with your dog or something. Like, I think sometimes we look over those things that bring us joy because we're trying to look for those bigger things, or like what the world classes as success, and we forget about the little things that actually are worth living for. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, I love, you recently had a little penguin and a star, and
Yeah.
I saw the post and I was like, it's so I think you're totally
I
right.
literally have like a little, like right here, like a little sticker of him.
Oh, he's so cute.
I know, he's probably my favorite character. He has lots of products with him on.
That's amazing. Um, so I know we've talked about the joy, and we'll come back to that, but, I'd
Yeah.
like to know, which of your symptoms do you find the most debilitating and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, it's hard because I find that because every day is so different,
Mm,
sometimes it can jump between things of what's the hardest. So, for example, if I had plans with a friend and my pains are much higher that day, that can be my most hated symptom in that time because it's gonna, you know, interrupt that time with my friend. And when pain is quite high, um, it kind of takes it, you kind of take yourself away from the situation because you're trying to deal with your own pains. And I just don't feel 100% present in that. So it does vary for me, but I think generally I get quite frustrated at myself with like brain fog and things like that because I know what I'm trying to say and it's just not coming across, or I just can't, like it's kind of working in my head but it's not translating to my mouth. Do you know what I mean? Like I
yeah.
think I think the frustration of things like brain fog, especially as like a business owner and forgetting things, um, that can be really exhausting to battle because I need my brain to work to get through the day. Like if I'm in pain, it's okay because I can do things to change that. But if my brain's not working, I can't get in there and give it a massage. Do you know what I mean? It's not, it's not going to get better. I think that's probably the most frustrating one. But yeah, it varies for me. Obviously, pains, especially when I have quite a good manage level, but when they go past that, I find that really difficult.
Mhm.
But yeah, like my brain, because well, I have a car as well, and I do drive, but if my brain's not functioning properly, I then don't drive because it's not safe, and that can be quite frustrating having a car and like a little bit of freedom, and then my body's like, can't do that, you know. So yeah, I don't know. It definitely bounces for me, but generally, I'd say the I need my brain to work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally understand what that feels like and why how frustrating it is, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
how does it go from here to here and not work, right?
Yeah, it's such a small space. Come on.
Yeah, totally. Oh, that's I think that's really interesting. I think a lot of people who don't have chronic illness will look at people and be like, "Oh, your pain is probably what's so debilitating, or your fatigue."
Mm.
And you're like, "No, no, like I can handle that with massages or resting." With the brain fog, I think that's why I always like asking this question because I think a lot of people who don't experience chronic illness don't understand what actually is the most debilitating or frustrating.
Yeah, that's very true. That is true.
Um, can you describe what a bad day symptom-wise looks for you?
Um, so as in like a worst day kind of,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so a worst day for me would be pain walking down the or up and down stairs. My husband on a bad day has to help me get out of the bath because I can't do it myself. It's yeah, like my muscles almost kind of, it's like they're not there on a very bad day, and I really struggle to lift myself up. Um, yeah, that's really really hard. And then like extreme brain fog where it's quite dangerous sometimes because if I, you know, want to make myself a cup of tea, I have to be really careful because sometimes I miscalculate the distance between the kettle and the mug and I'll pour it in the wrong place, which sounds so silly, but it's just what happens. I can't help it. Or things like I have put my hand against a boiling kettle before because I've questioned whether I've boiled it, and touched it stupidly without thinking that if I had boiled it, it would be boiling hot. So yeah, I think, yeah, like high pain, and kind of I rely a lot on those around me. When I lived with my mum, like before I got married, my mum was my main caregiver. But bad days is calling my mum saying, "Hey, can you come to me today? I need a little bit of extra help just doing basic tasks." So yeah, high pain and like just severe brain fog are probably my worst days.
Hmm. Yeah, and those must be hard, and I'm thankful that you have a good support system in your husband and your mom, so that you can,
Yeah.
you know, like weather those days, right? Like those are
Yeah,
the
yeah,
days where you're like,
exactly.
let's let this end, and tomorrow hopefully
Yeah,
will be better. So I'm glad you have
yeah,
people
yeah,
to help.
yeah.
And now, on the flip side, when you have a good symptom day, what do you like to do?
Um, hmm. So I think it's I don't really have anything that I like to do specifically,
Mhm.
but I really love that on a good day I can really kind of have my whole heart in what I'm doing. So like with my like on a bad day, if I need to get some work done, I just get it done and I leave. Like if I need to write an email or something really simple, I just get that done and leave. But I love that on a good day I can come in and I can kind of um just go about the things that I want to do and not necessarily that I have to do. And I also love little things like joining my husband for the dog walk. I can't always do that. Um, so being able to do that is really lovely. And even though even on a good day, I can't do, you know, miles and miles like some people can, it's just nice to get out and go into the open fields and just breathe some fresh air.
Mm.
Um, yeah, like I mentioned before, I've definitely changed I don't, a good day doesn't mean, right, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go meet this friend, I'm going to go run a half marathon. I'm not like, oh, I wake up and I just appreciate that I'm feeling better so that I can go about my day in a more positive way. I don't kind of have specific things that I'd like to do, but if I'm feeling okay and I've got a friend that I know might be around, then maybe I'll pop them a message and say, hey, would you like to come over for tea? Or it's very British, isn't it? Would you like to come over for tea?
That's what I'd want to do.
Or
So.
or if I'm up to it, would you like to meet at a coffee shop or something like that? But yeah, I don't ever plan anything crazy. I just love that a good day allows me to enjoy my day like even more. So yeah.
Mhm. I think I know I've said this before, but that's such a great attitude because, like, myself personally, when I have a good day, all of a sudden I'll have my list of 20 items, and then the next day I'm like, out, right? So I think you have a much more healthier attitude of like, let's just go about my day normally,
Mm,
a more positive experience instead of me who like
yeah.
push everything into one.
Yeah.
Like,
I
how do
think a
you?
lot of that has come like, back when I was first diagnosed and when I was a teenager, I definitely took my good days a bit too far. I'd be like meeting up with friends and stuff like that, and I'd pay for it for days after. But because it's been 12 years, I've really kind of learned to change the way that I do things because I know that a good day isn't going to be here forever. So I need to balance that so that maybe I could have 2 good days. Like if I could get that, that's even better. Um, or even more. Like if I can make that last longer by changing how I do my good days, then I've kind of taught myself to do that. Like I've learned a lot of boundary over that time. And even though I still overdo it. I have days where I definitely overdo it, especially if we've gone out for the day and you can't just get in your bed or get on the sofa quickly. You've got to get from where you are back home. Um, I still, have days where I overdo it, but I think sometimes you have to when you're chronically ill. You can't just plod along. If you want to go and do something, I think you should, even if it is you're going to pay for it. We've got to enjoy life still, even though we've got struggles.
Yeah, I think that's so important for people to remember, right? Is that
Yeah.
we still want to live too. We don't just
Yeah.
lay on the couch because we want to, right? We still want
Yeah,
to.
exactly. Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Um, what has been the most helpful for you as you've gone through this journey?
Um, like my support system for sure. So my family, and my husband. I met Aaron nearly 7 years ago now. So he's kind of seen me like before I was kind of managing things well. Like he's kind of seen me through a lot of that. But my family for sure, because we're all very close knit anyway. But to know that they're there in a second, that my mum will drop everything to come and make sure I'm okay is just um I'm just so grateful for it, because not everybody has that. And I, especially as I've been through some very hard times, like mentally, obviously physically as well, but mentally some really, really hard times. Yeah, just like I just don't know what I would have done without them there, because or like I really feel for people that don't have that. Like I'm so grateful for them. Yeah, I don't really know what to say other than that, because they're just wonderful. I love my family so much.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what you need to say. That's perfect. Um, is there anything else that you would like people to know about your chronic illness or chronic illness in general or your journey? Something that would help people? Anything that comes to mind that you'd like to add?
Something that will help. Um, I think more from like a if, for example, maybe they've got friends that are struggling, whether it's temporary or you know long term. Just I think patience is so important. Like learning to be patient with that person, because I promise that they want to be there for that event, that dinner, that cup of tea, whatever it is, they want to be there. But sometimes our bodies have different clocks and they just don't work how we want them to. So I think patience is so important. And as someone who I lost so many friends, looking back, they probably weren't really friends. Like going through chronic illness at such a young age, you lose so many people, but it actually gave me the right people, the people that actually cared and actually were my friends, stuck by me because, well, they were patient and um, they learned to understand that it wasn't just me saying, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. It was actually my body not allowing me to do it. And that's a really hard fight for that person that's struggling. So if you can have a little bit of patience and a little bit of extra love for that person that's struggling, then give it, because they probably really need it. So yeah, I'd say that's probably my
That's
yeah,
so important. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing that. And my last question for you is to tell everyone about your wonderful business.
Okay, so would you like a backstory or
Whatever
kind of
you'd
what I
like
do
to
now?
share.
Okay. So I started, well, I own a business called Deli's Designs. Deli is my nickname. I've been called Deli for as long as I can remember. I find it sometimes if people are close to me and they call me Adele, I'm like, I've done something wrong. So that kind of I just knew I wanted that in my business name. So I started the business in January of 2019. Yeah, 2019. Um, and I had a part-time job prior to starting the business. I worked in a call center. It was the worst time. It was horrible. I hated it. But I needed that little bit of extra income at that time, and I really wanted to learn to drive. And so I had to kind of push myself a bit to try that. But unfortunately, I made myself incredibly unwell by doing it. And I was essentially evolving, or not evolving, like going about my week for like one part-time day, um, for, and again, I didn't get paid much because I was only there once. I think it was meant to be twice, but a lot of the time I was too poorly and had to cancel one of those days. So my mum and dad, bless them, they told me, "You're not going into work today. We're going to quit for you." So my mum and dad went in and quit the job like on the spot because I was too poorly, bless them. And I essentially just took some time to look after myself and get myself to a better place. My granddad's not with us anymore, but he played like a huge part in me kind of starting what I have now. So I took time off after having that job to find myself a bit again and not just rely on a stupid phone, a phone job to maybe get me £80 a month. It was nothing for the amount of, pain it was causing me. I'd rather not have that £80 than be feeling how I was. So in that time, I met Aaron, my husband, and maybe it was a bit longer than a year actually that I took off. But anyway, we got married after, was it 18 months of being together, I think we got married. And I moved in with his parents until we kind of found a space. And in that time, I picked up traditional art again, things that I used to love to do. Like I did GCSE art at school, and it really put me off because that you have to do art, and I didn't really feel like it, but I had to do it kind of thing. So it put me off. So I picked up all these things that I loved again. And I had an iPad from school, and I used to watch YouTube videos of like people doing businesses and things. And I came across kind of this illustration community where people made stickers and drew on their iPads and stuff like that. And I thought, oh my goodness, I love that because I can take my iPad anywhere. I can draw from my bed when I'm absolutely exhausted, but I want to do something. My iPad can be right there and I can be resting and drawing. And I thought, we're going to give this a go. So I started doing illustration on my iPad, and I launched my shop in January of 2019. I think about 6 months after I kind of started picking up little bits and bobs. I did do, I had a few traditional art pieces that I put onto cards, and I also did like polymer clay and little bits of jewelry and stuff like that. But I've transitioned into just illustrated products now because it just works best for me and my body. So yeah, then Deli's Designs became a thing, and I just really wanted to create something that kind of gave me a purpose and made me feel like I was doing good in the world, and I was doing good for myself, but also for other people, because I just love people as well. And if I can bring a bit of joy to someone else's life, that gives me a lot of joy as well. So I started creating stickers, and I now, I can't really remember what I used to do anymore, but I've like now do so stationery and enamel pins, and I recently made my own washi tapes, so that was really lovely. I did those. What else have I got in here? I've got a colouring book. Like there's just lots of things that bring me joy, bring other people joy, and here we are. And then I started documenting that journey 3 years ago. Once we moved into our own home, I decided that was my time to start a YouTube channel because I'd always wanted to do one. I did have one when I was about 11, and I used to do random makeup videos. They're not on there anymore, no one can see them. But yeah, so I started documenting my small business journey, and I've just connected with so many people, specifically people with chronic illness, which has been amazing to have people that I can relate to, and I can be someone that they can relate to as well. So yeah, I love what I do. It's not, financially, some people might look at it and go, oh no, that's not a business, but it brings me so much joy, and it allows me to give that little bit to my husband. So because he keeps us roof over our heads, and whatever I can do while looking after myself, I really try to. So this has given me that little bit of financial freedom, and yeah, to be able to create things that just make me so happy I love it. So yeah, that's Deli's Designs.
That's so awesome. I love how you found something that gives you joy, but also can fit into your life. Like a
Yeah.
iPad that you can carry around. How amazing, right?
Yeah.
That
That's what I had to remind myself of as well. Like, if this if this ever gets to a point where it's not looking after me,
mm,
it's not what I should be doing. The reason I started this is to give myself something that I love, but also that I can look after myself with.
mhm,
So if it's not doing that anymore, then something has to change, because I don't want to end up in the same position. Even though I might be making a little bit more money than I did when I worked at the call center, I don't want to feel like that ever again. Like, I don't want to feel like that. It's not worth it at all. So yeah, as long as this is looking after myself physically and mentally, then that's good for me. You know?
that's incredible. I love that you're so solid in that like this is going to give me joy, but it's also going to keep me healthy. And that's
Yeah,
so inspiring.
yeah.
Can you please tell us how to find your website or your items, your YouTube channel? Where can we find you?
So everything. So I am on Facebook, but I don't post on there very often. But I'm under Deli's Designs on Facebook. Deli's Designs on Instagram. That is where you probably find me most active. I love Instagram, and I post. I try to post weekly studio vlogs on my YouTube channel, which is also Deli's Designs, and then my Etsy shop, which is Deli's Designs as well. So everything is kind of the same. Deli's is thankfully a very unpopular name, so I could have everything as Deli's Designs, thankfully. So yeah, but I'm sure I can give you direct links and things when this is posted. But yeah, just type in Deli's Designs on Google. You should find a few bits and bobs.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Adele, for thank you so much for talking with me today. It's been so wonderful and informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking. It's been quite nice to talk about it. I don't talk about it that often, but when I do talk about it, it makes me realize that it is very important to me, even though it's not the forefront of me as a person. It's so important to shed light on things where possible. So yeah, thank you for asking. It's been really lovely to talk to you.
Lovely to talk to you as well.